guys, Robbie here from CFSB Nutrition at CrossFit South Bend. Today we are going to talk about the power of macros and why you would even use macros when it comes to trying to improve body composition and athletic performance. So as we've talked about in other videos, when it comes to body composition and athletic performance, not health, I've said that over and over again and I'll reiterate it, not health. But when it comes to body composition, things like fat loss and muscle gain or athletic performance, calories are incredibly important. However, calories are not all that there is to the story. There are other things like food timing, supplements, other stuff like that. But most importantly, I would say macros. So what are macros? Macros are short for the word macronutrients, and it refers to things that we need in gram or larger amounts to survive. They're basically the three main things that we need to eat on a daily basis. So protein in grams, carbohydrate in grams, and fat in grams. This is as opposed to micronutrients, which are things we need in microgram or milligram amounts, things like vitamin A, D, K, zinc, calcium, magnesium, so on and so forth. So what I drew up here is a list of different macro splits. When someone asks you, what are your macros? Dude, bro, what are your macros? This is what they're talking about. They're talking about what is the split of macros. Every single thing up here is 2,600 calories. Every single one of these things, every single line is equal to 2,600 calories, but it's split up differently in terms of protein, carbs, and fat. Now, just to make it easy, I kind of kept the protein consistent. Assume you have someone who has a lean body mass of 150 pounds, then they would need roughly 150 grams of protein per day. So I just kept that constant because the thing that really is going to fluctuate for most people in terms of the substrate or the fuel that they need for their sport is the carbs versus the fat. And some people do better high carb, low fat, and some people do better low carb, high fat. And some people's sports will demand high carb, low fat, and some people's sports will demand low carb, high fat. So let's go through a few of these and just kind of talk through the different features of them. So the carnivore diet has become very popular these days. You would actually probably be eating a lot more protein than this on the carnivore diet, but just for ease, this would be, a decent amount of protein, 0 grams of carbs, and then a whole large bolus of fat. If you were doing something like keto, you might bring the protein down a little bit. Depends on what type of keto you're talking about. Usually the carbs will be less than 50 grams. Depends on who you talk to, whether that's total or net, subtracting the fiber out, and the fat would be 200. And then the rest of these are different variations of low carb and high carb. So there's no exact rule on what's high carb. There's no exact rule on what's low carb. But generally speaking, I would consider low carb to be right around 100 grams of carbs a day. Anything below that would be, low carb to very low carb. When we get to 150, we're kind of in the middle range. Medium carb, medium fat is around 200 grams of carbs. Go higher than that, 250, and then I would argue that about 300 grams of carbs is pretty high, so that's high carb, lower fat. You'll see that the fat's creeping down, and then as you get up to about 400 grams of carbs for the day, your fat is pretty low, and the percentage here is about 15%. Realistically, from a health perspective, you don't want to go below more than like 10 to 15% of calories from fat, because then you start to mess with hormonal issues and fat-soluble vitamins and things like that. So you really wouldn't want to go too much further than this. I suppose I could have written 450 and 500, but I just went up to about 400. So what this is meant to show you is that there are a million different ways to split up 2,600 calories, and these will have dramatically different metabolic effects on the body. Dramatically. Someone who's eating carnivore is going to have a way different type of metabolism than someone who's eating 400 grams of carbs a day. Someone who is training for the highest levels of CrossFit or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or mixed martial arts, generally speaking, is going to need more carbohydrates than someone who's doing powerlifting or Olympic lifting or just basic gymnastics movements or just trying to walk and do aerobic stuff. We are generally fans of the idea that most people should be earning their carbs. They don't necessarily need to be intaking these dramatically large amounts of carbs, 300 and above, unless there is some sort of fitness need or perhaps health need to justify that. So usually what we recommend in most videos is somewhere in the 100 to 200 range, with, variations from that only coming if there's a specific need to maybe go keto for some reason, or a specific need to go higher in carbohydrates. But this is the essential point, is that for 2,600 calories or whatever calorie amount you pick, there are an infinite number of ways to split it up in terms of macros, and that is going to have a profoundly different effect on the body in terms of metabolic effect, but also sort of an athletic performance and perhaps body composition effect that goes beyond just the calorie intake. So when someone tells you it's important to consume just a particular number of calories, that's maybe true for body composition and athletic performance, no doubt about it. But there's also a reason why we focus on macros, because again, these have dramatically different effects upon the body. And carbs are a really good fuel for more high intensity stuff, and fats are more of a fuel for kind of that lower intensity aerobic type stuff. All right, guys, so hopefully now you have a sense of why you would even use macros and how these can all be split up and utilized. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.